Thank you and welcome. My name's Michael Blakeney and I'd like to welcome you all to the Queensland Rural Press Club. Great to see you all out. Appreciate it's a challenging time. The cotton industry is still picking, as a lot of you all know. We've got school holidays and every second day someone else gets sick, so appreciate your support coming out today. It's a great turnout. We did try and get some diversity in the club because, as you know, we spend a lot of time talking about the beef cattle, but I note James Nason's managed to put up a Santa, so apologies Cotton Australia. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. As you can see, I'm not Stacey, our club president. She's taken ill and you've got me for the day to look after you, which is great because I'm quite chuffed. I started my career in cotton, probably not as long as Adam, but it's fantastic to celebrate 50 years with Cotton Australia here today and also 50 years for the Queensland Rural Press Club, which I'm sure most of you know as well, so fortuitous. I'd like to welcome Cotton Australia board members. I understand we've got a couple of past presidents as well, that's fantastic. Also like to acknowledge Her Excellency Dame Quentin Bryce, previous Governor-General, welcome. And Mr Alan Brimblecombe, who was the inaugural President of Cotton Australia back in 1972, so fantastic to have you along, Alan. 50 is a significant milestone for any organisation, and I was trying to scroll through and see some appropriate quotes, and I found one by a Canadian actress called Marie Dressler, and she said, by the time we hit 50, we've learnt our hardest lessons, we've found out that only a few things are really important, and we've learned to take life seriously, but never ourselves. And I thought that reflected Cotton Australia in many ways. Over 50 years, CA has steered the industry through numerous challenges. It's learnt its lessons and it's focused on what's important to its stakeholders. The success of a strong and unified industry voice is reflected in the fact that over 80% of its members contribute a voluntary levy, and I think that's extraordinary. It's also reflected in how CA has transformed its image on sustainability through the past 50 years to the point where it's almost textbook reading for many other ag industries who could take a leaf out of what Cotton Australia's done. We look forward to Adam reflecting on the last 50 years and perhaps telling us about the opportunities for the next 50. Today the program is lunch, which will be served next. Adam will speak at 1 and we'll follow that with a Q&A session to end. As always, must sincerely thank our home paddock sponsors, McCulloch Robinson, Colliers Agribusiness and Australian Retirement Trust for their ongoing support of the club. We really couldn't do what we do without your support, so thank you. Any of the tweeters out there, if you are tweeting, please use the hashtag RPCCotton. So for now, enjoy your lunch and we look forward to Adam speaking. Thank you. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed your meals and are ready for Adam. It's my pleasure to introduce Adam Cuddy, CEO of Cotton Australia. Adam was appointed back in January 2007 after previous roles with the New South Wales Department of Agriculture and then General Manager of Cottonseed Distributors. He tells me his first posting was out to Nevertire and he lived on a cotton farm, drove through it every day, obviously never escaped. Adam, 37 years in the industry now and 15 of those years as CEO of Cotton Australia. Adam, I was checking my notes this morning with a cotton grower who'll remain anonymous, and he quoted that George Orwell actually had a better quote about making 50 years, and that was, at age 50, everyone has the face they deserve. Now, I'm sure they were being complimentary, and I'm sure many of us would like to look like Cotton Australia does at 50, so welcome, over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Michael, for that introduction and to the members of the Queensland Rural Press Club for the invitation to speak today. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the Press Club as well as Her Excellency Dame Bryce, and I'd also like to acknowledge a number of former chairs and directors of Cotton Australia that are here, and I can't name them all, but I want to thank them because they're the people that shaped where our organisation and our industry is today, and these are unpaid directors' positions. These are the people that have put in for their industry for the love, not money. So I do want to acknowledge them and thank them for being here. Today, cotton in Queensland, I just wanted to take you maybe at the start on a little history lesson, but first up, yes, it is Cotton Australia's 50th birthday, 50th anniversary, and it is wonderful to have the original chair, Alan Brimblecombe, in the room, and there's a couple of photos that I'm going to show with Alan in them in a little bit. But Cotton Australia, for those that don't know, we're the policy and advocacy arm. They're fighting for our growers. So the policy and advocacy work. We also do work on stewardship, and that includes biotechnology and chemical stewardship and biosecurity. We guide the spend on research and development. So the growers contribute money in, the government matches it, and we guide the R&D corporation on where that money's spent. And we also do work on community and capacity. And we've got a great education program. We've got lots of leadership programs in the industry. So that's a little snapshot of Cotton Australia, and 50 years old this year, like the Queensland Rural Press Club. Now, the history of cotton in Queensland, cotton came out on the first fleet, but in the early days, back in the 1800s, cotton was grown up here, little cottage industry. The history books say that the first 3 bags were exported in 1930 back to the mother country. In the 1960s, there was an increase in cotton plantings because the price of cotton went through the roof because of the American Civil War. And then 1921, though, I think was a key year when we saw a cotton gin established in Rockhampton, the first cotton gin in Australia. And 1921 also saw one established in Brisbane, in William Street. And a grower association formed, a marketing board formed. So I just was going to take you through a couple of the old photos that we've got in the archive. That first cotton gin up there in Rockhampton in 1921, and they reckoned it was state of the art. 3 bales of cotton an hour. And I just checked with a few of the cotton ginners today, and they said, look, the average gin these days, 60 bales an hour. So, a little bit of improvement on that first gin. The gin in Brisbane. And the key thing about the cotton gin was that it allowed the cotton to be compressed into the bales, and then that was beautiful for exporting it. And you can see here, 1921, cotton bound for the UK, and these days cotton goes into containers to be exported, but the way they're doing it there, just straight into the hold of the ship, they call that break bulk. And what I'm hearing is that this year, because of the shortage of containers, I'm hearing that there could even be a shipment out of Brisbane in July of 100,000 bales to Turkey using that method, break bulk. So we're going back 100 years, but to get it out of the country, because the clients are wanting it and we can't get the boxes. So that's what I've heard. We'll see if that pans out. But that's why those gins were so important. There was also at the time, back in the you look through the history books, you've got these schools. Now this is the Milford School Experimental Farm. We had all these little rural schools pop up, and the Boona Rural School opened, and it had all these feeder schools and kids out in the paddock running little experiments in how to grow cotton, and that the Queensland government was encouraging the next generation of farmer to come on to open up country in Queensland, to get into cotton and other crops that were showing potential. Put this photo in. You've got to remember, back in those days, this is all hand-picked cotton, and this photo, for those that can't read it, it says Miss Chown was the champion cotton picker, and she could pick 85 pounds of seed cotton in an 8-hour day. So 40 kilos in an 8-hour day. Now, I ran a quick calculation of our new beautiful John Deere pickers. This is not an ad for the John Deere guys. I know they've got a table here somewhere, but if you look at what they're picking, maybe 20 hectares, in 8 hours, 12 bales a hectare, they're picking 133 tonnes of seed cotton, you'd need 3,300 Miss Chows out in the paddock to pick the equivalent amount. And if you take the calculation a fraction further and said, well, those people are on $25 an hour for the 8 hours, your daily wages bill would be $660,000. All of a sudden makes that $1.5 million picker look cheap. And that's not a paid advertisement. So this photo just showing a farmer, pushing the cotton into his bale, but it also says that they'd make these bales to send down to the ginnery in Rockhampton or Brisbane, but they'd often find a pumpkin or two in there to just add a bit of weight to the bale. So you can see, horse and cart down to Brisbane, or this photo in the Burnett district, heading to the railhead and to get it down to the gin, to the gin in Brisbane. So those bales being delivered. And then the first cotton classer working for the Department of Agriculture and Stock, grading cotton in 1926. So you had your first classer grading that seed cotton as it came in. And then I think a real change started to happen in the late 30s, 40s, where the first sort of hint of mechanical picking. This is a really primitive mechanical picker, but it was the start of that mechanisation. But the real start was in Queensland. In that early 60s, down there in the Lockyer Valley and up on the Downs. And I think this could be on Alan Brimblecombe's farm there. It is Alan giving me the thumbs up, at Forest Hill down there in the Lockyer Valley in 1961. So one of those real pioneer crops of the modern industry. And back in the early days, apparently this piece of tillage equipment, you can't tell from the photo, but it actually gets driven backwards. And to cultivate the crop. And there's another photo from Alan's farm in 1969. So mechanical picking. And here's that well-known identity from the cotton industry, Alan Brimblecombe with someone else, and this was the start of a whole lot of gins being built across Queensland. And now in Queensland there are a dozen cotton gins that growers can bring their cotton in to be processed, because remember that crop isn't worth anything without the processor. It's a real strength of the Australian cotton industry. We love our ginners. We work closely with them because that crop we grow is not worth anything without them. And it's fantastic. We've got those dozen gins here. When you think about the value of that infrastructure, it'd be 300 million plus worth of ginning infrastructure. To broaden out a little bit, it's a wonderful history of cotton in Queensland, and really, you can see, 100-year history or more. But the industry these days has grown, and you can see, more than 150 regional communities, rely on cotton. 80% of the farms are family operations, well actually 90% of family operations, and they produce 80% of the crop. So, the 10% that are corporates, they're big farms, and say they grow about 20% of the crop. 66% New South Wales, the other third in Queensland. And, we've spread from central Queensland down to the Victorian border. I was just talking at lunch here, when I started at Nevertire, which is in the middle of New South Wales, just out of Warren. That was the southernmost cotton growing area in the country. And we'd run a field day there, and the blokes from the north would come down, they'd all have jumpers on and shiver and say, how can you grow cotton here? It's so cold and you look where it's grown now, down to the Victorian border. So you never say never, you can see where the industry can expand. And this year, you look at the industry this year, we're expecting to generate about $4.5 billion worth of export income. We've got a 5.5 million bale crop, which is about 1.25 million tonnes of fibre. And along with that, for our cattle friends, there's a 1.5 million tonnes of cotton seed. And I know it's a pretty valuable byproduct and in demand. We've got more than 1,500 growers, 90% of those are families, and, obviously employ over 12,000 people. And we're expecting a similar sort of season next year. You know, with the water that's in the storages and held on farm, we think there's going to be another great year next year. So it's quite an exciting time for the industry as a whole, not just here in Queensland. If you look at Australian cotton production over the years, you can see the peaks and troughs. You know, 2007-8, you know, the drought, we thought it wasn't going to get any worse than that, and then we had, you know, 19-20, you know, 2019-2020, you know, just devastating, smallest crop in 40 years. But it does go to show that we only plant cotton when the water's available. You know, the growers, they're not going to spend $4,000 a hectare on a punt. They're only going to plant this crop when the water's available. And I think that's the exciting thing for next season. With water available, good prices available, they can forward sell. They can hedge that crop and take advantages of the good prices that are out there. And one thing we need to just reflect on in Australia is the yield record. You know, we're producing 3 times the world average. You know, we're the highest yielders in the world. We're producing 3 times the world average. Now, you know, I think a lot of the growers that are in the room today would acknowledge the wonderful work that our researchers have done over the years. You know, we're really an industry indebted to the researchers because they've given us, you know, wonderful varieties. They've given us techniques and methods to grow the crop that have led to these enormous yields that we can get in Australia. But I think there's also a pat on the back got to go to those growers, because nowhere in the world do growers pick up new technology as quickly as Australian cotton farmers. CSIRO release a new variety, the growers are growing it the next year in big areas. You know, most other industries that just creep up a little bit, we test a little bit here and there. But that's the faith that the industry has in our researchers. You know, they get in there and back those researchers. So wonderful researchers and growers that are willing to back them have led to this fantastic story of yields of cotton in Australia. And, you know, the story even gets better because this year, some of you may have heard, some of the yields coming out of central Queensland. And you know, up there at Emerald, they've done it a bit tough. Like all the rest of the industry's had a bit of water. It hasn't been that pretty up there in Emerald in central Queensland, but some of the growers have been able to achieve yields, you know, in excess of 20 bales per hectare. You know, record yields, not on massive areas of the crop. They're trying new things. They're trying new techniques. This is cotton that's in the ground for 250, 60 days. So it's a longer season cotton that you can do that up in Emerald, but how exciting. And, you know, it was only 2 weeks ago we were out in 20 bales a hectare cotton with Tony Marr, the CEO of NFF, and Fiona Simpson, and actually on the picker was Murray Watt, the new Ag Minister. So he was in the picker with Ross Burnett, you know, learning about cotton firsthand, picking that crop. So, yeah, it's still experimental trial work, you know, innovative growers getting in and having a go. But, yeah, pretty exciting to hear those sorts of yields. And it might send our John Deere guys back to the drawing board picking those sorts of yields, because those beautiful new pickers are groaning going through that crop. One of the success stories, and it really was, you know, back when I started in the industry, an Achilles heel was our pesticide use as an industry. But, you know, it's now one of the great success stories. And, you know, pivotal in that success story is the use of genetically modified cotton. The combination of genetically modified cotton and integrated pest management has led us to reduce the amount of insecticide that we use by 97%. You know, and so it's just a non-issue now. Now, that's just a wonderful result. And you never hear anti-GM people talk about cotton because it's just such a good story and such a good environmental story. Can you think of the tons of pesticide that have been taken out of the environment by using that GM crop? It's a great story. We don't get attacked on that, and it's good, because what a success story. If you look at that crop on the left, that's just genetically modified cotton with no spray. On the right, just conventional cotton with no spray. The insects have just eaten it. Now, in the old days, if we wanted to get that crop on the right looking like that was the one on the left, that was a dozen applications of insecticide to kill the insects, to get the crop. So that's how far we've come. Integrated pest management, looking after the beneficial insects, and genetic modification has been a real success story. And you know, back when we released that first genetically modified cotton in 1996, the naysayers were all saying, the insects will develop resistance, you know, it won't last, they'll develop resistance. Well, you know, our scientists came up with tactics that the growers implement. We have pupae busting, we have refuge crops, we have planting windows, we have lots of tactics that our researchers gave us to manage the resistance, so that we're watching that all the time, because there's no way we can go back to the way we used to do it. So we've got to really look after this technology. That stewardship is really critical to us. And that's just the pesticide reduction story. It's a great story. And we've also got in these cotton varieties these days herbicide resistance traits. You know, it's resistant to Roundup herbicide. So, you know, in a field like that where you've just got barnyard grass comes up as thick as the hairs on a cat's back, you can just come in with Roundup and control it, and your crop, you know, can grow through it. So the use of that herbicide tolerance trait is so good, because it's leaving the vegetation there. When you cultivate, you're losing moisture, and so another good success story. The other Achilles heel that the industry had was around water and water use, and I wouldn't be standing up here today if I had $1 from everyone that said, "Oh, cotton's a thirsty crop," you know. But when you look at it, cotton's just a run-of-the-mill summer crop. I think it's the fact that so many people in, you know, southern Queensland, central Queensland, northern New South Wales grow cotton because it gives the best return. And so of the available irrigation water, yes, it uses a lot of it, but it's just average when you look at it. You know, if people weren't growing cotton, they'd be using the same amount of water on corn or soybeans or other crops. It's just that there's global demand for cotton, the price is good, the gross margin stacks up. And our growers over the years have done enormous amounts of work to drive the water use efficiency. It's not the same story as the insect one, which is about transformational change. But this is more incremental. Growers doing lots of little 1s and 2s and 3% things that all add up. And you know, the latest work from the Department of Agriculture shows that, you know, over the last 20 years we've been able to improve our water use efficiency by 50%. So we're growing, you know, 50% more cotton with a megalitre of water than we were 20 years ago. So it's still got to keep driving that water use efficiency, but we're certainly in the right direction. And, you know, growers are, where it's suitable, moving to overhead irrigation. Some are moving to drip on the right soil types. You know, I sometimes get some of the environmental groups saying, look, everyone should be using drip irrigation. Well, you know, drip irrigation is wonderful on certain soil types, on some of the lighter soil types, but on the heavy clays, which is 60 or 70% of the Australian cotton industry, it's not that suitable. So we've just got to make sure people don't jump at the wrong things. Most of the irrigated fields are laser level, preventing waterlogging, making it efficient to irrigate. We've got some areas where, you know, the irrigation schemes are lining the channels and preventing any of that seepage. And we're moving to, you know, modern technology where you can open the gates and irrigate the field without even being there. And one of the big moves has been through water scheduling technologies. You know, being able to schedule your water, and this picture just demonstrates a little bit of wonderful CSIRO technology that's now been commercialised through Goanna Ag. They link up the canopy temperature sensor, so it's measuring the temperature of the canopy of the crop, and so they know what temperature the canopy's at if there's going to be stress, with the moisture probe, and then looking at the algorithms are looking at the forward forecasts and telling the grower when they should be irrigating. So wonderful piece of CSIRO technology, and again just driving that water use efficiency even further. And one of the things we've always got to deal with in this water space at the moment, which, you know, it can get them across sometimes, is just that misinformation. You know, this one's a classic. I pull this one out. You know, it's the Adelaide Advertiser lamenting that the floodwater from Emerald didn't get down to Adelaide. and then everyone pinched it in between. Now, for those of you who are good with your geography, Emerald's not in the Murray-Darling Basin. That water at Emerald goes out at Rockhampton, so it might have to go the long way around to get to Adelaide. But that's the sort of misinformation that that we have to deal with. And and I've seen similar sorts of things with federal senators coming up and looking at cotton in Gundawindi and the drought and saying, well, this is obviously water that's been stolen. How could these people have water? When I talked to those growers, they held water over from the previous year in their dam because they were very concerned that if they didn't grow a crop, they'd have to let some of their workers go. So they grew half the size crop one year and half the size the next year to try and make sure they hung on to their workers. And then to get splashed in the paper and social media and whatever, sort of almost being accused of doing the wrong thing was, very distressing for them. So, this misinformation is a real concern to us. I put up just some of the challenges as we see them. The energy costs, I think everyone understands that. These supply chain issues, I think that's demonstrated by the talk we had earlier about break bulk and just going with cotton straight into the hull of a ship. Workforce, telecommunications, just so critical. It's not about getting Netflix. It's about being able to download the drone data and make decisions immediately without having to go back and wait for hours to download information. It's those rising input costs, it's the global competition, and for us it is our social licence. We have to keep working on it. And interestingly, we had a couple of hours again with Minister Watt on Tuesday, and he listed off his top 3 things immediately at the moment. Is certainly workforce, biosecurity and input costs. So he's been out listening to growers, farmers, and they're the things that he's going to be working on as his priorities. He had some other things down the list, but they were his top 3. And I think he's certainly listening to to growers and getting out and about and hearing what's going on. The opportunities, well, the fact that there's water in a lot of the storages and on farm, and that is a massive opportunity for next season. We've got this emerging industry up there in North Queensland, the Northern Territory, in WA. It's just set to expand, and we've got work to do there to make sure the stewardship is spot on, because we've got to get it right, and it's really important that we're working with those growers in the NT and WA and up north to get things right, to have strong stewardship, to grow the crop right from the word go. There's the opportunities in research and innovation, which I've spoken about earlier. Our growers are ready to adopt it. I think the opportunities to leverage our sustainability gains, I'll talk about that in a minute. Local manufacturing and the consumer demand for Australian grown products. I'll just go on to that because the Australian Fashion Chamber, representing the fashion industry, which is a $27 billion industry in this country, surveyed their members, and at the bottom of it, the top 2 things that their members were concerned about was sustainability and local manufacturing, and that it plays right into what we want, because I just went and just cut this out of the headlines in 2003, the Courier Mail. It's less than 20 years ago that the Rockley spinning mill out here closed down. The end of that manufacturing in Australia now. I wonder when we can see that start again, because certainly some of these mills shut down, labour was an issue, but these days, a modern mill is more automated, less labour. People that are running the due diligence on maybe bringing some spinning back to the country say that the cost of energy is the thing that's holding them back. So, maybe as the cost of energy comes down, the renewables come online, we might see that, local manufacturing again. Certainly, further up the supply chain is crying out for it. And then our sustainability record, well, it's really something that brands and retailers globally are looking at. And just the fact that we can document that improvements in water use efficiency, the fact that we're using 1/3 less land to grow a bale of cotton than we did 20 years ago, the reductions in insecticides, and the work we're doing, reducing our emissions. And there's further work to do there. The bulk of our emissions come from our nitrogen fertiliser. So there's work to do on, driving our nitrogen use efficiency. But underpinning all that work on sustainability, or all those metrics on sustainability, is our best practices program. Initiated 25 years ago, it's voluntary, it's grower-led, an on-farm environmental management system, and really the ones in blue there are the key modules that growers work through in BMP, some 400 checks that they work through to achieve to be certified as in our BMP program. And we also run a best practices program for ginning and classing separately for the ginners and classes. And at the end of when the grower feels they've achieved all the things, because, yes, the initial part is a tick box exercise. You go through and you say, yes, have I done that? Have I done that? The environmental auditor comes out on farm and you actually have to demonstrate you're doing the things. If you said you kept the weather records, you've got to show them. If you said you've got irrigation scheduling and that, you've got to show the records, you've got to show the scheduling gear. You've got to demonstrate to that auditor all the things that you've ticked. So it's definitely not a tick and flick exercise. And at the end of the day, we end up with proud farmers that can display that best practices certification sign on their farm. Here's the Brownlee family up there in Theodore, and the Brownleys are, a well-known Queensland cotton growing family that have grown cotton across many parts of Queensland, and proud to be in our best practices program. And one of the beauties is that we've been able to align our best practices program with the global Better Cotton Initiative. So we're in a program called Cotton Leads with the United States, talking about the credentials at a national level, but we're also involved in this global roundtable, the Better Cotton Initiative, where growers are on the governing council with brands and retailers, with manufacturers, and with NGOs. And so there's certainly some tension there, but it's all about lifting the quality of cotton globally. And that's what we need to do, because cotton does get a bad reputation globally. Even if we're doing the right thing with pesticides and other things here in Australia, people will tell me about what's happening with pesticides in India and other countries. We need to help them use these products better so they're not dragging down the global cotton industry. So the Better Cotton Initiative is a great sustainability initiative that our chairman Nigel Burnett is over there at the moment at their conference, representing Australian growers, telling the Australian story, because it's very powerful in front of all those global brands and retailers to hear the story of Australian cotton. And here are some of the brands and retailers that are members of that Better Cotton Initiative. They're the big global brands, and Cotton Australia, our team are working with a lot of the local brands as well. And one of the things that we've been doing in recent years, every year we run a farm tour where we get people from the brands and retailers and the NGOs out into the paddock. And sometimes the people come out and they're hesitant about cotton. They've been worried. They've heard stories about pesticide and whatever. And whenever we bring them out on farm and we introduce them to our growers and the researchers, they walk away converts. They walk away saying, how do we get more of this product? It's just so powerful, taking them out on farm, cutting out the middlemen and introducing the end user to the person that's growing the crop. And we can't take everyone out on farm, and that's why some of you had a bit of a go with the virtual reality glasses when you came in. We've got the VR farm tours, and this is at the Sydney Royal Show, and we're going to have them at the Ekka this year. Thank goodness. We've had them waiting in the wings for a couple of years, but COVID obviously stopped us. But if we can't get them out on the farm, we'll take the farm to them and give them that experience. Let them meet a cotton farming family. Let them ride on the picker. And I know our team there at the Sydney show, a couple of kids said, "God, that was the best ride at the show." So you get them out on farm, they get excited about cotton. But if you can't get them on farm, well, you get them on the virtual reality. A couple of interesting things that are happening at the moment. This circularity trial at Gundawindi, and here's a photo of Sam Colton from Gundawindi Cotton, a great industry supporter. We've initiated a collaboration between some brands, growers, researchers, just looking at full circle circularity, taking old cotton sheets, shredding them, and then reintroducing them to the cotton field. True circularity, and our researchers are measuring, well, what does that do to soil health? And that? Because this is something that could be scalable across the globe if we can get this right, if we can understand this. And so a really exciting project that our Research and Development Corporation and others are looking at, because you will hear often about textile waste and fast fashion, and that's the beauty of cotton and wool, those natural fibres. They'll break down, and if you put them into landfill, yes, they break down, but they emit a lot more greenhouse gas than if you put them back into the field, and you get a lot more carbon sequestered into the field. So, yeah, that's a very exciting trial that's happening at the moment. And then we've got this biodiversity project with Country Road and Landcare. We've brokered with them, where, based on the sales of their Australian cotton garments, Country Road are putting money into Landcare, in excess of $200,000 a year to revegetate farms along the river, tree planting along that riparian zone, which is so important along the edge of the river. So a great collaboration between the end users and the growers and Landcare. And certainly we're seeing growing demand for our crop. There's new and emerging markets. With China putting the soft ban on Australian cotton, China was taking 70% of our crop. And in October 2020, our cotton merchants started getting calls from their spinning mills in China saying, the government's told us if we use Australian cotton, we'll be penalised. We can't take any more. And so it's been a wonderful piece of work by the Australian cotton shippers to be able to find new homes for our cotton. And we've been working very closely with them. I guess Cotton Australia's been working up the brand and retailer end. The shippers have been working with their spinning mill clients, and so they've been able to expand a number of existing markets, find some new markets, and that's been so important. The high quality of Australian cotton pulls it through the market. It's just so important, that high quality. And we're contamination free, machine picked cotton, contamination free. That is a key selling point. The sustainability credentials, incredible real sustainability credentials are important. Our short shipping times from Australia up to those markets in Southeast Asia, and the fact that we're counter-cyclical to the Northern Hemisphere, again a key selling point. And hopefully we're going to see natural fibre starting to come back over man-made fibre. The fact that those people are starting to understand those man-made fibres aren't going to break down. Whereas we're going to get that breakdown of the natural fibres. And when we think about, one bale of cotton, what do we produce out of it? 215 pairs of denim jeans, which I'm sure you've all got a pair. There's 1,200 T-shirts out of a bale. 4,300 pairs of socks. But when you take that calculation and you start thinking about it, this year's cotton crop, 1.25 million tonnes, will produce a pair of jeans, a T-shirt, jocks and socks for over 1 billion people. So when I say there we clothe the world, that's obviously a porky, but it's an eighth of the world. And so, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about our wonderful industry today, and I'm very happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Adam. Very interesting and thorough talk. I was interested to see, once you stop talking about yield and productivity, it really comes down to consumer perceptions and stakeholder perceptions. And I suppose to start the questions off, you mentioned misinformation. In today's world of social media, how do you, here you're talking to the converted, how do you reach that generation who are on social media?
Look, one of the reasons that we're doing so much work with the Australian brands and retailers, and all their market research says Australians, if they can't buy Australian made, they'll buy Australian grown. So there's somehow sometimes a little bit of a disconnect between the farm. Some of them are hesitant about our growing practices, but they love the product. So we've got to link up with the product and the wonderful garments and things that get made, and linking up with Australian brands and retailers. They're telling the story for us. You would have seen recently Cotton On Kids moving to 100% Australian cotton, and the Cotton On Group is looking at moving to 100% Australian cotton. Now, Cotton On Kids did some beautiful social media clips out on farm and sent it out to their database of 990,000 people. Now, there's no way Cotton Australia's got a database like that and can get that sort of reach. And even if we did, people would say, well, of course Cotton Australia says that. So what we're getting here is this third-party endorsement by the people that are using our product. They're telling people about our wonderful product. And so that's the way we're trying to do it. We haven't got a massive marketing budget to attack this, but we can certainly use our brands and retailers that love our product to tell the story for us.
Thanks. I think we have some microphones. Thanks, Rachel. If there are questions.
I'll just add to that one, the social media, because our growers say to me, oh my God, we're losing this social media battle. Oh, it's just terrible, And unfortunately, the algorithms on some of the social media sends the negative stuff their way, and they're starting to feel like the world is against them. Whereas really, the average punter doesn't feel that way. Now, you ask our growers that sit there at the Sydney Royal Show or at the Ekka what the sort of conversations they're having with the average punter that walks through. And there's, 1 in 200 might sort of express a little concern about the average punter. It's just not there. So the social media is not real. It doesn't mean we don't listen to criticism, but we need to, and we have a sustainability reference group where we have NGOs and other people on there giving us feedback. I'm not saying we don't listen to it all, but social media can distort your view. And so here are our growers feeling that they're doing the wrong thing, whereas really, I'm saying to them, come down to the show and meet the average punter and you'll get a new lease on life because they love you. They want to meet a farmer. They love what you're doing.
Thanks. Questions from the floor? Thanks, Rawdon. You go. Okay. Thanks.
Excellent speech. Credit to you. That's a old gentleman. I'd say how old the small. Always admired the cotton industry for its ability to engage with just not grower, but also processor or ginner, handler, your logistics right through the chain. Any little hints for a similar situation where there's 2 or 3 major ginners here in Australia, and similar in beef processing and red meat processing in Australia. So any hints would much appreciate.
Well, when you look back at the history of Cotton Australia, it was originally Queensland cotton, Aus cotton, Namoy cotton coming together and putting the seed money, and the processors started the organisation, and even today we have ginners on our board of directors. It's you're better. It's not saying we never have a disagreement, but you're better off sorting it out in the boardroom than on the in the Queensland country life. That just doesn't give industry unity or whatever. We'll sort it out. Yes, there are robust discussions to be had across the industry, but I think it's sorting it out and not in the public domain, and getting on top of it, and also having a vision for the industry that everyone works towards. I think is important there. But you've just got to keep remembering that product isn't worth anything without your processor, and everyone's got their job to do. So you've got to work together. You've got to pack a tight scrum for the good of the industry.
Yes, great speech. In my early youth, I was planning to be a cotton farmer, but it didn't eventuate too long. But look, I wondered whether you could just elaborate. You said that 70% of our cotton's going to China, so it sounds like 70% is not going. Where is it going? And how are you going against the other synthetic fibres? Because in some, again, social media areas, it seems as though synthetic fibre is getting a bit of a renaissance. against the natural fibres of cotton and wool?
I do have a slide here I might be able to just pull up that answers that question, if you bear with me for a second. Yeah, so this is just a graph of the world fibre market, and you can see, back in, say, 1970, in yellow is cotton. So in 1970, cotton was the number one fibre in the world. And then you can see the man-made fibres in red, so the oil-based synthetics. You can see that the rise of the oil-based synthetics. Cotton's share has still grown, but as a percentage of the market, it's declined. And so, yes, we certainly have a battle with the man-made fibres, but I think the more that people are starting to understand about microplastics and the impacts of those on the environment, the fact that the man-made fibres are not breaking down, they're there for hundreds of years. I'm hoping that this more environmentally conscious society, and you're seeing it in Europe, you're seeing it in the US, will start to move back towards the natural fibres. And then if we can build on stories like that work we're doing on circularity, if we can get that into a scalable solution, there'll be a wonderful story there that the man-made fibres just won't have. At the moment, they talk about recycled polyester and things like that, but it's really just one recycle of some plastic bottles or whatever. It's and it doesn't have the quality of the natural fibre. So certainly natural fibre is the number one competitor that we've got out there, and that's why we're happy to do work. We've had a project with Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade happening in Pakistan. So DFAT, Cotton Australia and the Better Cotton Initiative in Pakistan, helping Pakistani farmers, training 50,000 Pakistani farmers in better production techniques. Now, some of the growers said to me initially, what are we helping the competitors? What are we doing? Well, we're not really helping them grow more cotton. We're stopping them poisoning themselves and misusing pesticides and things. And at the end of the day, they're not the competition. The man-made fibre is the competition. That's what we've got to focus on. So, I think we've got to try and lift the quality of cotton growing around the globe so we don't have these bad news stories, and also focus on the good things about natural fibre over man-made fibre.
Dan Gallagher from Kangaroos. Thanks for your excellent presentation. I think the perennial question we get is around sustainability, and the sustainability journey is so impressive for cotton. All that work you're doing with brands and the international marketplace, how do you translate that to the growers? Are the growers getting a premium? Are the growers getting recognition, or is it really about market access for them?
The last few years, the growers have been picking up around $5 a bale premium for their best practice cotton. I've got some growers out there that have had their farm carbon certified that are saying they're getting more than that, $20, $30 a bale when they combine the BMP. So there are actually premiums out there, and that's exciting. I think trying to get more transparency into the market so that the people that are doing the hard work on sustainability, the grower, gets the full reward is something that we really want to work on, because there might be more out there, but we've just got to get that transparency into the marketplace. So it's a good question, and it was raised by a number of industries, with Minister Watt the other day, and it was another focus area for him about how do we translate those premiums through to the grower.
How are you? Great to speak to you. I'm just interested, and was very interested in looking back on the history of Cotton Australia. If we look forward to, say, 2030, strategically, and I've asked you to look into your crystal ball, what do you think is the biggest opportunity between now and 2030 for Cotton Australia?
Well, for cotton in Australia, I think that, good, sensible, sustainable development of the north is where things are going to be moving, and there's enormous opportunity when you think about 55% of the water in this country is above the Tropic of Capricorn. The opportunity is huge. The cotton that's been grown up at Katherine in the Northern Territory, it's rain-grown cotton, so there's enormous potential for rain-grown cotton. We know the Ord, we've got the largest dam in the country over there in the Ord, and there's country developed, ready to go. They just need a cotton gin over there. At the moment, they're carting the modules 3,000 kilometres, and it's just it's not economic to do that. So once they get a gin, there'll be expansion there. So we've really got to make sure we've got the stewardship packages right around the biotechnology, any fertilisers and chemicals they use. We've got to get that right. And we've also, the biosecurity piece, you'll hear people talk about a green bridge. We know we've done work, and the industry has funded work up in the islands above Australia, and we know that there are certain diseases up there and insect pests, and so it won't take much to get them blowing across. And so there's the potential to set up the green bridge. So we're going to have to be very careful about not bringing anything, into the north and then bringing things further south. So, that biosecurity piece is really important. That's why our RDC has invested in that preemptive work to see what is out there, up there in Torres Strait.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Lopes from the Portuguese Consulate in Queensland. Thank you for a fantastic presentation. After studying agriculture at university, my first exposure to cotton was in Mozambique. So I'm sure you all understand a very different reality to Australia. So my question is, with the shift away from China, how do you see the markets evolving now, and who is now buying Australian cotton?
Yeah. And I was thinking I didn't answer that properly for Larry, so it's good you came back to that. And certainly we've seen a big expansion in Vietnam, and I think the fact that that's happening in Vietnam says that there are a lot of Chinese-owned spinning mills in Vietnam, and so because they're not allowed to bring Australian cotton into China, they're getting it spun in Vietnam, and so the yarn will still be going into China. So I think that's a market that's certainly expanded. We know that cotton is going to Turkey, so I think that, from what I understand, that break bulk shipment might be going to Turkey. We're seeing an expansion in Indonesia and also Thailand, and then certainly interest in Bangladesh, but shipping the port in Bangladesh, if you mention that to any of our cotton shippers in the room, they, it does their head in, getting into Bangladesh, and there are issues there. So, but certainly the one that's emerged out of the pack has been Vietnam.
Adam, wonderful story, well told. Firstly, carbon story of cotton. Can cotton become carbon neutral? And secondly, what's happened to Greenpeace and genetics? Have they just given up a lost cause, or has something begun?
Yeah, I just don't hear from Genethics and Greenpeace anymore. I think 25 or 6 years on, Jeff, we've proved them wrong. The story is just too strong about the benefits of genetically modified cotton, and they've gone on to fight other battles, I think. But certainly the carbon story is one that is really exercising our growers' minds, because in the carbon space, and some people have asked me, in your BMP program, why isn't there a carbon or climate change module in there? Well, it's actually integrated all the way through in the water module. If you drive your water use efficiency, then you're pumping less, you're using less diesel or less electricity. If you've got the tractor efficiency and the fertiliser efficiency right, again, you're reducing your emissions. So, mitigating climate change is embedded in the best practices program already. Now, whether we need to pull all those things out and put them into a module that says carbon or climate to make people feel better, I don't know, but it's ingrained in the program. So I think we're doing we understand where our emissions are coming from, and 60% of our emissions are from fertiliser, from nitrogen fertiliser, and a big chunk of that's just the manufacture of the fertiliser. So, burning the natural gas to get the heat to get the nitrogen out of the air. That's that Haber-Bosch process. That's our number one emission. So, I'd love to think that the green hydrogen story is going to help us there. When we get that green hydrogen, we can use that hydrogen to drive that Haber-Bosch process and make that fertiliser. That would halve our fertiliser emissions. So, I think technology is going to, look after us on some of these things. We've already come a long way when you think back to the 80s in reducing our tillage. The way we used to prepare a cotton field, it was like the roads department. We'd rip it up and we'd put lime on it and then we'd plough it again, and then, it was just a recipe for compaction, and we'd burn a lot of diesel. And now, reduced tillage and leaving the stubble there, building the soil health. It's a really positive story. So we've got some farmers that are doing the carbon work, doing the audits, and finding that they can be carbon positive. But I think that's on their farm as a whole, so they're using some areas of native veg and whatever to offset the carbon. The thought that the cotton field could be carbon neutral or positive, I don't know. I'm to be convinced. I've got some guys that are using lots of chicken manure and cattle manure from feedlots and building the carbon in their soil, and that might be the way. But if you're just using nitrogen fertiliser, it's from the plant, it's very difficult. So, I think we're still learning about this, about the carbon piece, and I think it's one that will play out. And I know our growers are interested, and we've got a number of really good speakers at our cotton conference down on the Gold Coast in a few months' time on that topic. The other piece of work we're doing, though, well, I've sort of talked about the mitigation work. There's some really good work going on the adaptation side of things, and our researchers are doing work. We know that the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are going to increase. The temperatures are going to increase. So they've got field experiments with sort of glass houses sort of almost over the field crops where they're elevating the carbon dioxide, they're upping the temperature and looking what that does to the plant. How does that change the phenology of the plant so that we can then understand better how to manage the plant? So that adaptation work is really important too, because as we see the climate change, we'll be able to adapt our management practices and still grow a successful crop.
I think we've got time for one more, Adam.
Last question.
Yeah, Nick Quirk from Cane Growers. Adam, we hear a lot about sustainability reporting in every industry, except us at the moment, as a framework. We have the BMP program. How important is the pressure or the opportunity for having whole of industry reporting versus having that verified farm-based reporting of what's going on?
Look, I think you saw me put up some information about a program, the Cotton Leads program. And that's something where we partnered with the US and said, at a national level, our metrics tell a great story. And we've got national level metrics that we can put out there, and we can let the world know how we're sitting at a national level. And for some brands and retailers, for some businesses, that's perfect. But others want to know it down to the farm level, and that's where we're in that Better Cotton initiative, that my BMP fits into. So different businesses want different levels, and I think we've got to try and cater for them all. And so that's where we've got the national level metrics and the farm level metrics.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Rural Press Club, I'd like to thank you, Adam, for a really fascinating address today. Got very fond memories of when you spoke here last to the Rural Press Club of Queensland back in 2014. And you spoke a lot about sustainability that day. I think one of the great, part of the great value of a forum like this, the Rural Press Club, is no matter which industry you're in, you get to hear and learn from innovators and leaders from other industries across agriculture. And there's no doubt that what the cotton industry has achieved from a sustainability perspective, positioning itself as the global leader in the sustainable production of cotton, is, well, actually, like Michael said it before earlier, it's a textbook example for every other industry. So I'd just like to say thanks Adam, congratulations to you and to Cotton Australia, to all the farmers in the room, to the researchers, all the people that have made that possible. We have a small presentation for you. Look at this little bottle there, and one of our patented Rural Press Club ties, which I think is made from 100% sustainable Australian. Oh no, it's actually got windmills on it, so that's one of the original forms of sustainable energy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Cotton Australia, and congratulations. 50 years, quite an achievement. That brings to a close our formal proceedings. You're welcome to hang around and enjoy the club for a bit longer. Very special thanks to the team at SAS, Rachel and the team. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to pull it off without your team. Thanks to TATS as well. They're always very generous in giving us the facility here. It's our favourite location. I think everyone appreciates that. Again, our sponsors, McCulloch Robertson Lawyers, Australian Retirement Trust and Collier's Agribusiness. We wouldn't be able to support the club if we didn't have your support, so very much appreciated. A little bit of advertising for the club. We have our 50th celebrations on the 15th of July, so love to see you all there. Again, similar to Cotton Australia, we think it's a fantastic achievement, getting to 50 years and hopefully a lot more beyond that. And then we also have our famous Eka breakfast, which goes on sale 1 July, so next week, and that sells out really quickly. So if you're looking for a seat to that, I'd make a move. Thanks for your attendance. I hope you enjoyed it. Adam, Cotton Australia, thanks again. Well done.